Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we wrap up the 2024-25 campaign by essentially kicking off the 2025-26 campaign, because as one season comes to an end, we already start talking about the next. Celtic failed to win the treble on the final day of the season, which means next year is a big year for Brendan Rodgers to try and reclaim what he made the norm at Celtic Football Club. And he's already said he wants freshness. So today, in the first part of my two-part series, we're going to evaluate the current Celtic squad, have a look at what needs to be done moving into next season, and generally just talk about what can be done to make this Celtic side rule every competition once more. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. I would like to quickly say thank you to everyone for making this a very memorable and enjoyable season, once more covering Celtic here on YouTube. We are so close to 50,000 subscribers, and I'm pretty confident we'll be there by the time the next campaign begins. But if you haven't already, go down, hit both of those buttons. It's absolutely free. As I said, part one of a part two series today, spanning over this afternoon and tomorrow. And without any further delay, let's get into that series. So even though Celtic failed to get the job done on Saturday, missing out on another historic treble, we still ended the season with a fantastic league campaign, which saw us win 4 in a row. We beat our closest rivals in the League Cup final to make sure we walked out with at least a double. And we've seen steady progression in Europe, which is what I think every Celtic fan yearns for in this current climate of world football. It was an enjoyable campaign, and I won't let anyone rob that from me. I know that Saturday's disappointment will sting for the next couple of weeks. A lot of folk will struggle to get over that shortcoming, but generally speaking, what a campaign it's been. One that's been very, very exciting throughout, and one that gives you a lot of promise, I think, when you think of the things that we did do this season. I know that we missed out in that treble, but I look at Europe especially and think that we were moments away from forcing extra time out of Bayern Munich in the knockout stages of the Champions League. That's madness. You know, that's something that I didn't think we would be able to do this year, and yet we've done it. So there is positives to take from this campaign, but at the same time, there's no point in being naive, that some things need to change in regards to the squad, and that's exactly what we're going to try and look at this afternoon. So in typical Ryan118 fashion, it's time for the end of season tier list. It's part one today, where we evaluate the Celtic squad for the final time moving into the summer window, and then tomorrow in part two, we're getting the shopping list out. We're looking at exactly what Celtic need to improve this squad going into next season. Yeah, we know how it all works by now. One last evaluation. Here's a quick reminder of how my evaluation of the squad looked like 2 or 3 months ago when I last looked at the Celtic squad. So it'll be interesting to see if any of my opinions have changed between then and now. I think there's a few players who might move about from that last tier list, but nonetheless, I'm going to be as brutally honest as I can. And I'm going to try and have a mixture here of what I think the manager will do and what I think the manager should do. So a bit of my own opinion mixed in with this today, but while also keeping myself grounded in reality. So here we are with the trusty tier list in front of me, including every Celtic player who is a part of the first team squad this summer. So this includes players returning from their loan deals. This includes players who are coming into situations where we could sign them, aka Jeffrey Schlupp, and it just includes everybody who is currently considered a first team player at the club. We don't have the likes of Toby Oluwayemi in here. We don't have the likes of Matthew Anderson in here, who return from loan deals elsewhere, because they've not really made the jump into the first team as of yet. So we're going for first team players only, and that's how we're going to go through it. So yeah, we're going to go all the way from top players who I just don't think the club will allow to leave, all the way down to those who we should punt and see out the door in a random order. Hopefully not here too long this afternoon. Let's get all the goalkeepers done as one, shall we here. Kasper Schmeichel and Vincent Salo are going nowhere. Both of these players will stay with the club. Vincent Salo still right now is considered a squad player. He's the backup keeper, and I know a lot of people are trying to make the case that he could potentially even bridge into being a starter next season. The reality is Kasper Schmeichel enters the last year of his footballing career most likely. He will be Celtic's number one. Even if you're angry at him for his mistake in the Scottish Cup final, he is Celtic's number one, and that's not going to change next season. Vinny Sinsalo will obviously be around as the understudy, but Scott Bain, it's looking like he will be off. It looks as though Celtic are prepared to punt Scott Bain. The reports are coming through now that Ross Doohan has agreed a deal with Celtic that means Scott Bain will leave the club after a 7 or 8 year stint with us. Yeah, I can't believe we're finally sitting down and saying that Scott Bain's off. What a career he's enjoyed here. The easiest job at Celtic. He's probably loved every minute of it. I'm incredibly jealous. He will be missed. Bainiacs, my heart goes out to you, but it looks as though Scott Bain is finally away. So Alistair Johnston very simply goes into the top player category for me. Is there a chance that he could leave Celtic this summer? Of course there is. There's a small chance of anybody leaving the club this summer if the money is right. And Alistair Johnston has been one of the best right-backs in Britain this season, let alone at Celtic or in Scotland. He has been phenomenal. He's catching the attention of everybody on an international level as well with his performance for the Canadian team. Yeah, he's a great player. Celtic can't afford to lose him though, in my opinion. If he was to have an offer come in for him, Celtic need to milk teams for every penny they can possibly afford for him. He's just so good, and I think he's going to be so tough to replace. Now, I know that he's struggled with a little bit of inconsistency this season. I think a lot of that's been down to fitness issues. We've seen the problem flare up with his hip late on in this season. But he is so, so good, and I think that replacing him when the day comes will just be so difficult. I would regard him as one of the top players in this squad. I don't think Celtic should let him go this season. We're another year away at least from being able to consider that, in my opinion. Austin Trusty, for me, can remain a squad player, and who knows, might even be able to progress on that if he can pick himself up next year. He's had an up and down campaign. He's had the heights of his performance against Atalanta in the Champions League to the lows of being bullied by strikers in the Scottish Premiership. He's a very weird, inconsistent player, somebody who I still believe has a chance to be a starter at Celtic, but he really needs to prove it sooner rather than later. The fact that we only spent 6 million, the fact that we spent 6 million quid on him only a year ago suggests to me that we're in no position to be selling him this summer. I know a lot of people have floated that idea. I just don't see it. We're not going to make profit. We're not going to break even with him either. So the club aren't going to get rid of him. I think he'd be a very good backup centre half to have. And if he can use his opportunities when they come along to prove that he could be a first team centre half again, I still believe he's got it in him. But we need evidence, and we need it quickly. Greg Taylor's away. I think we all know that by now. He's off. The farewells are pretty evident. We've seen it at Hampden at the weekend. We've seen his Instagram post. We now need a backup left back, but Greg Taylor is away, and there's no point in having a lengthy discussion about that. I thank him for his services. I think that he will be missed by some Celtic fans, by a lot of Celtic fans, and I thank him for his services, but he's off. So let's just cut that conversation from the video today. Mike Nawrocki as well, and people are going to hate me saying this, but I think he's off as well. I think he's gone. I just don't see a world in which Mike Nawrocki remains a Celtic player next season. Brendan Rodgers, to me, has made it perfectly clear that Mike Nawrocki will not be a Celtic player. He wasn't even in the squad for the Scottish Cup final. And I'm as frustrated as you guys are. I think the guy's never put a foot wrong. I think he's better than Liam Scales. I think he's looked better than Austin Trusty. I don't see why he's not there, and I don't know if we ever will know the reason why. Maybe we need to wait for him to leave to do a tell-all interview. But he's off. Let's be real about this. If he stays through another transfer window, I will be stunned. I would love him to get a chance, but it's just not going to happen. So this is the one that I think is going to spark a lot of conversation in my comment section. I think a lot of people will be unhappy with me saying this, but I'm just going to be brutally honest. I said that I would try and sprinkle some of my own opinion in with what I think the manager will do in this window. This is one that I'm definitely leaning towards more of my own opinion, to be honest with you. But I think it's time that we sell Liam Scales. Now, I know that means we have a lot of work to do defensively this summer, and maybe that's naive of me to suggest. I understand that. I just don't see Liam Scales getting any better at Celtic. I think we've seen enough. And I don't think that Rodgers will sell him. I think Rodgers is a big fan of him, evidently. He uses him more than any other centre-half partner to Cameron Carter-Vickers. But I think that his time at Celtic has ran its course. He's peaked for me. He's very evidently at a level now where he's plateaued, I think. And I just don't think he's good enough. to be quite honest with you. Now, I know a lot of people will be unhappy with me saying that, and a lot of people seem to think I've got an agenda for Liam Scales. I don't. I respect the hell out of him, and similar to Greg Taylor, I thank you very much for his service to the club. I don't think he will go, but I just think he should. I think we can do a lot better, and I think there's a spot up for grabs there that could go to a better player. One of them being Mike Nawrocki. So if Nawrocki goes, I think Scales should go, if that's how we're going to do things, quite honestly. So, yeah. I still think Scales will be here next season, but I'm putting him in punt for now. We're going through all the defenders, aren't we? Cameron Carter-Vickers is obviously a top player that I don't think Celtic can afford to let go this summer. If, we're going to be looking at new centre-halves, then I think that keeping Vickers is important for so many different reasons. As a place of leadership, as a place of mentorship, and just partnership. All the ships. When you consider all of that, all these things, he's got to be so important to gel someone in, and I just don't think we'll find a better centre half. To be quite honest, I don't think Celtic are prepared for the day that Vickers leaves the club yet. We've not been linked with anybody who I think sounds convincing. I would be really concerned if Vickers was to go. His price tag should be higher than basically anyone in the Celtic squad. He's been the best Celtic centre half I've seen in the last 10-15 years, and losing him would be detrimental to us, I think. So yeah, I just don't want to see Vickers go at all. He should be prioritised as a keep above 95% of the squad. I'll get Stephen Welsh done out the way first. He's got to be punted, surely. I think his Celtic career is all but over. His loan to Mechelen is coming to an end, but I'd imagine upon his return he will be moved out again. This time it should be on a permanent basis. Celtic aren't going to struggle with club-trained players next season when you think about the fact we'll have James Forrest, Kieran Tierney, Callum McGregor, potentially Anthony Ralston, a couple of the other younger guys who maybe come through. Yeah, Stephen Welsh isn't needed anymore. Simple as that. And on that note, I do think we will keep Ralston. I think he's one of the guys who will just be here for a long time. I've always been up and down on Ralston and his Celtic future, and I don't think that means we should neglect looking at other right backs to come in and be back up to Johnston. I still think that's something I would like a bit more assurance in, but I just think Ralston will be here for a wee while, and I don't see him being moved on this summer by any stretch of the imagination. So squad player for Ralston. Welsh, surely we've seen the last of him. There's a few players here that I'm looking at coming up and going, wow, we're going to be getting rid of so many, including Gustav Lagerbielke, who returns from Utrecht. If we can't find a permanent buyer for the money that Celtic want, then I imagine we'll still try and loan him out. And in some capacity, Gustav Lagerbielke is going to move on. And that's just, I think, fact at this point. Now, we've heard that Utrecht can't afford them, but I don't think that necessarily means that other clubs can't afford them. We'll just need to wait and see. He'll leave in some capacity. He's another one like Welsh that I think his loan move spelled the end of his Celtic career. As for players whose Celtic career will go on, there's a couple here to run through quickly. Luke McCowan, he'll remain as a squad player. He'll continue in the role that he had this season. I think everybody's okay with that. Not many complaints coming in the direction of McCowan staying. And Arne Engels, despite being one that will be debated and one that will be talked about as a potential player to move on, he is not going to go, in my opinion. I think he will stay. I think he should stay. And I've spoke about him at depth these past few weeks. I don't want to sound like a broken record. You all know my thoughts on Arne Engels. And if you're in a rush to get him out the door, I honestly don't know why. I just can't understand it. Yes, he can be better. Has he been good enough at times? Obviously not. But over the course of the season, when you lay out his stats, when you lay out his best performances, we all know there's undoubtedly a player in there. And I don't think Celtic are going to get offered enough money to consider selling him in this window. It's as simple as that. Give him his full pre-season. Give him his chance again next season. This time next year, we'll be able to have a much more honest conversation about Arne Engels. Why are we in a rush to get him out the door? Boys, 21. Just go here. Give him a minute. I think we can batter through the next three quite quickly. Paolo Bernardo will remain. He will remain a squad player at that, I think. A lot of people asking the question as to whether or not he should see more football next year. I don't know what the case is with that yet. I think the central midfield department is one that's pretty stacked at the minute. Could go through a bit of changing this summer. So his conversation is a bit more difficult to have. Nonetheless, I don't see him leaving the club by any stretch of the imagination. Callum McGregor is Callum McGregor, he's the captain. What's the point in even having a conversation about it? And James Forrest enters the last year of his Celtic career. Well, potentially the last year of his Celtic career. He has one more year on his contract. He has been huge for us at times this season. Listen, what would I have to say about James Forrest that hasn't been said before? He will be here next year. We all know that. And we want him to score again next year. We want him to continue that record. So some interesting conversations can begin at this point of the evaluation. Luis Palma will go. Somehow we'll find them a home. Don't know where it'll be. It might be in Greece. It might be back in Honduras. It might be in America. Who knows? But somehow we will move on Luis Palma. I know Olympiacos have said no to him, but there's got to be somebody out there that's willing to take a chance. Once again, will it be in loan capacity? Will it be in permanent capacity? I think the club would sway more towards getting rid of him for good, just get him off the books completely. We just need to wait and see. I think there's going to be patience required for Luis Palma's signature. The agent is going to have to do a lot of work here to try and find him a move. Yeah, he's not had the best couple of years since joining Celtic, but I think we've seen the last of him. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Then sadly, someone who I think we've seen the last of is Rio Hatate. I don't want Rio Hatate to go. I'd rather the club kept him if they could, but I just don't see a world in which he stays. I'm not as confident as I was of Matt O'Reilly leaving this time last year. Like, I knew O'Reilly would go. I was 100% on that. Like, he was off. Hatate, I'm not quite as confident. The injury obviously adds an element of uncertainty as well, because we don't quite know the extent of that yet. Will that scare anybody off? We don't know. But if he's fine and if an offer's on the table for him, I think he'll want to go. And that's heartbreaking for some people to hear, for some people to expect, or to accept, sorry. But that's what I expect. I just don't see Rio Hatate being here, and he's going to be a huge player to lose, by the way. Don't let the Rio Hatate haters convince you that we're better off without him. He will be a big, big miss, and Celtic need to make sure we replace him well. But what I will say is, remember, we signed him as a guy from Japan who was unknown for a very small fee. It doesn't mean we need to sign a £15 million player. I'd rather we went out and we spent some decent money, but it doesn't need to be. I say that without trying to sound like a bold bootlicker. Jeffrey Schlupp, I don't think will come back. Now, we're hearing reports that Celtic have had brief discussions as of late to see if he's interested in coming back next year. Of course, he will be a free transfer possibility with his contract expiring at Crystal Palace. I just don't see it. I think his wages will be too much. I think he'll ask for too much. And yeah, I just don't see it. I wouldn't be angry about it. I know that for some people he's been really poor in recent weeks, and I would agree with that, but it wouldn't totally put me off signing him. I think as a backup to Kieran Tierney, he could be fine for a year or two. I just don't see it at all. I don't think he'll come back. Two players that will stay with the club this summer in some capacity, Nicholas Kuhn and Adam Ida. I would consider Kuhn personally as a top player. I think most people will have him down in this category for the kind of second half of the season performances. He didn't quite sustain the power and pace that he started the season with. But I still think he's a top player personally. I don't see him leaving this summer. I think he's got at least one more year in him. And I hope so as well, because I just think he's quality, to be quite honest. I know that he's had his ups and downs this season, but you think of the stats he ended the season with, and it just shows you the type of player you've got there. He will stay. I'm pretty confident in that. Adam Ida, he'll be a squad player. I'm a big Ida fan. You all know that. Can he be better? Of course he can. Has he been good enough? It's up for debate. But he'll stay. Will he be starting striker for Celtic come the first game of next season? No, I don't think so, and I don't think he can be. Don't think that would be very reassuring to Celtic supporters, but he will be here. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, we should cut our losses or move him on or whatever. Guys, go and look at what I said about Arne Engels, and it's basically the same about Ida. Jota, of course, suffering right now from that big injury. I mean, on paper, Jota should be like right up here. He's just, and in fact, I'm going to keep him up here. We've just brought him back in January. He's sadly picked up a big injury, which will keep him out for the first couple of months of the season. But it's Jota. He's not going anywhere for many different reasons. One of them being the fact he'd probably fail a medical if he tried to move right now. But it's Jota. He ain't going anywhere. Which brings me on to some guys who I think Celtic will just naturally move on. Johnny Kenny, I would like to see loaned out. I think he should be loaned out. somewhere maybe closer to Celtic so that we can get a bit of an evaluation on his level in this league. He looks sharp, he looks good, but we just haven't seen enough, and next year he's not going to get many chances. You've just got to be brutally honest about it. You might want it, but it's not going to happen. So I would personally loan him out. Yang, I would personally loan out as well. Not going to lie, after the Scottish Cup final, it brought back a lot of my old opinions of Yang. I question whether or not he is truly good enough. But I'll give him one more chance, and maybe in doing that, maybe loan him out somewhere. But the other two, Kwon and Telio, they're off. Let's just be real about things. If Kwon gets another loan move, God knows how, but he barely kicks a ball for Hibs, so how are we ever going to justify him kicking a ball for Celtic? And Telio, aye. Which finally brings me on to Daisen Maeda, who I have left to last for a reason. Because I'm not 100% confident he stays with Celtic next season, and I know you might not want to hear that, but sometimes you've just got to be honest. And there's a very good chance he could leave if the offer is right. We heard in early April, I think it was, that Celtic had put a contract on the table for Daisen Maeda, and nothing has came of it yet. And every time he's been asked about it, it's always been, we'll wait and see at the end of the season. We'll see at the end of the season. We'll talk about it then. Those are the type of things a player says when they want to go. And I'm not saying that Daisen wants to go, but he's just not doing a very good job of convincing me that he wants to stay. I've got to be brutally honest about these things. However, if Celtic can put the money on the table to make this the most attractive place for him to be, then I'm hoping he stays. I'm hoping we get one more year under Daisen, with Daisen Maeda under Brendan Rodgers. I just think that he would be impossible to replace. The traits of his game, the unique style that is Daisen Maeda, it's a one-in-a-generation player, I think. I just don't see Celtic getting another Daisen Maeda. And if Brendan Rodgers wants to progress this side in Europe in particular, yeah, we need freshness, but you need a lot of familiar faces in there. You need a lot of consistency in there. And Daisen Maeda was Player of the Year for a reason. So, I want him to stay badly. I think Celtic need to throw the kitchen sink into keeping him for another year. And even if he doesn't want to sign a contract, just try and convince him to stay for another year and then tell him, right, fine, January or next season, depending on where we are, we'll move you on. But I'm hoping he puts pen to paper. Really bloody hope so. So here is my final evaluation, and as you can see, I believe that Celtic have a lot of trimming to do, and this is a big group of players not to return to the club. So I think a lot of you might be watching this and going, are you sure, Ryan? I'm not 100% sure, because I'm not going to lie to you. Celtic only having, let me count here, 2, 4, 6, 12, 15 players that I deem good enough isn't a big enough squad moving into next year. That would imply that Celtic are going to make 9 or 10 signings this summer. I just don't think that will happen. So naturally, a few of these guys will end up staying. You know, whether it be Yang, whether it be Liam Scales, whether it be Gustav or Jeffrey, a few of these guys will probably stay on top of this core of players up here. But I do believe if we have the scope to do it, we should make these changes. We should go into the season with this base of 15 players plus Kieran Tierney, because they're the ones that are good enough, in my opinion. And the rest, for one reason or another, will likely move on, or should move on. So, it's a big summer, man. I wouldn't quite shout or scream for a rebuild, but if you want freshness, here's one way to keep it fresh. So that does it for part 1 of the summer transfer window lowdown. Tomorrow we will look at my shopping list for Celtic. How do I fill these 10 gaps that I would leave in the team? And how should the squad look come Champions League registration day? We'll talk about that tomorrow. Make sure to tune in for it. Until then, please take care of yourself. Let me know your opinions and thoughts in the comments below. And I'll see you all next time.